2. Hello, everyone. I am so excited to have you join us today. I have my very good friend Lisa with us today, and really, she's like my go-to expert anytime I have a question about billing, because she owns an incredible company, and it's actually award-winning. She does some pretty amazing things outside of just making the lives of chiropractors across the country's lives easier by handling their billing for them. She founded her business, Gold Star Medical, back in 2006 as a way to provide a home-based job as a medical biller for her then disabled husband. She's got a 35 plus year career in chiropractic, medical, and dental fields, including 10 years as a senior practice consultant and speaker trainer with one of the largest practice management firms in the U.S. And to be honest, she's going to be amazing today. You've probably heard her speak on this webinar series before, but I can tell you that hearing her speak in person, you just don't quite get the experience online that you do in person. And she's one of those people that I would definitely say is dynamic. And when you're talking about something like billing and coding, let's be honest, it can kind of be a snooze fest from time to time, but she makes it fun and she's lighthearted and engaging and gives you real life information that you can actually utilize in your own practice to become more efficient. But if you don't want to do all that on your own, she will give you options on how she herself can help you become more efficient by taking that off of your plate. Anyway, you can read her full bio on our website by clicking on speaker profile and checking it out. Like I said, award-winning company. They won the Texas Governor's Employer of the Year award in the small business category. She's won the Women in Business Champion through the Small Business Administration. Did I tell you she was just like amazing? Seriously amazing. So anyway, I'm going to be quiet right now. I'm going to turn it over to Lisa because she has so many interesting things to share with you today. So Lisa, I'm just going to shut up now just because I could keep going on.
Okay. Thank you so much, Christy, as usual, for that absolutely wonderful introduction. I appreciate it. And I'm a little embarrassed, but thank you so much for your very, very, very kind words. Okay, so as Christy said, welcome everybody to our presentation today on outsourcing your billing. Is it for you? And as Christy mentioned, I do own a medical billing company that works as an outsourced billing company for chiropractic offices and medical offices all throughout the United States. But really what my goal is to do for you today is to give you an impartial and objective look at billing companies and billing services and really help you decide if this is something that would benefit your practice. I'll be upfront and I will tell you, and I have always been this way with doctors that I've spoken to over the years, is that for some doctors, outsourcing your billing is not the way to go, okay? And I'm saying this as a billing company, and I may be taking business away from me, but at the same time, I know from the years and years of experience that I've had with this is that there are some providers that, number one, they have a great billing company, or not a billing company, they have a great billing department in-house, and they don't really need to hire a billing company. Sometimes maybe they just need to hire somebody for some additional training. But there are instances in which hiring an outside billing company could be a very, very beneficial and ultimately profitable move for your practice. So let's talk about this and really look at this objectively. So the first thing that I want to do is I'm a stats kind of person. I try to take as much emotion out of my presentations as I can because I don't want you hiring a billing company to be a knee-jerk reaction, or really any business decision that you make in your practice. It should not be a knee-jerk reaction. You really need to analyze what you're doing in every aspect of your business and why you're doing it. So let's talk about healthcare spending. Healthcare spending, the last time I taught this, and I did teach this about 2 years ago for ChiroHealthUSA, so hopefully I have a whole new audience now, 2 years later. But healthcare spending back in 2015, when I was looking at the stats for my presentation at the end of 2016, was healthcare spending was at that time at $3.2 trillion. It has now, since in a 2-year period, is now increased to $3.5 trillion. That doesn't seem like a lot, 3.2 to 3.5, but we're talking about trillions here. And so when we look at basically $300 billion more than it was 2 years before, that's a lot of money. So healthcare spending is increasing every year. And as you'll see by the breakdown of how healthcare spending is done by service or product, 20% of all healthcare spending is on physician and clinical service. That represents $700 billion a year that is spent on healthcare in the United States. It represents 17% now of the gross domestic product of the United States. And by 2025, they're estimating that healthcare spending is going to increase to over 20% to 25% of the gross domestic product, which is staggering, okay, that healthcare spending represents so much of our gross domestic product. One element, with that high of a percentage. So one of the other things that I want to talk to you about before we actually get into whether billing, whether outsourcing your billing is right for you or not, are some other types of statistics. The AMA came out with a private health insurance report card, which basically gives detailed demographics on insurance carriers' performance records, as well as statistics on the numbers of claims processed, their turnaround time, denial rates, top reasons for denials, and so on and so forth. And this was always very interesting to me because some of the statistics that we're seeing here and what you're seeing on this report card are your most common claims denials, okay? And so one of the things that if you have a billing department in-house, or you have been doing this for any length of time, working in the insurance, billing claims out to the insurance industry, is that a large percentage of the work that you do is for a small percentage of claims that don't get paid correctly, okay? If you're lucky and if you have a great billing department, you're probably looking at about a 3 to 5% error rate on your claims, but that 3 to 5% that you're having to spend time on following up on those claims, appealing those claims, rebilling them, and so on and so forth, could represent 20% or more of the total amount of hours that your billing department would be spending each week. So you have a large chunk of time being spent on a small percentage of claims. And so these are your top claims denials. And when I'm looking at these, when you look at these codes called CART and RART, these are actually codes that show up on an EOB that explain why a claim is either being reduced, the amount of that payment is being reduced, or the reason why a claim is being denied. So those are your CART and RART codes. They're the EOB equivalent of an ICD-10 code on a claim or a CPT code on a claim. It's a standardized code set that you will find on most EOBs. And so these numbers each represent a different type of denial. So you'll see Aetna, for example, their top denials are for CART 96. Anthem, their top denials, 23% of their total denials, or almost 24% of their total denials, are for CART code 204. HCSC, which is the healthcare service company, is their top CART code is 16, which is 39.77. Well, what do these codes actually mean? So let's kind of take a look at what these three, 96, 204, and 16 are. So 96, if you get a denial for CART 96 on your EOB, that is a non-covered charge. So basically, this service is being billed to the insurance company and it is not covered. Now, what could you have done to to prevent that denial? And what did you do to make sure that those non-covered charges are being paid out by the patient? And you'll notice that Aetna, 35% of their total denials are for CART 96, Anthem 10.8, Cigna 41.93, almost 42% of Cigna's denials are for non-covered charges. Let's take a look at 204. This service, equipment, or drug is not covered under the patient's current benefit plan, which is another way of saying a non-covered charge. It's just a different descriptor of almost the same thing. Anthem Blue Cross Blue Shield loves this one. They use it about 24% of the time. And then the big one, and this is the one that when I see this in providers' offices and I see this denial, it means that you have some deficiencies in your billing department to where they do not understand how to properly bill out claims, because what a 16 CARC code is, and it's usually preceded by the letters CO, which stands for a contractual obligation. The reason code is this claim or service lacks information or has submission or billing errors, which is needed for adjudication. Wow. So what the insurance company is saying, Healthcare Service Corp, 40% of their denials are for CO16. Anthem, 20% of their denials are for CO16. Medicare, almost 25% of their denials are for CO16. The problem with the CO16 denials is that, or we've actually called them rejections, is that this type of a rejection means that the claim has never even been processed by the insurance company. It gets to the insurance company, there is a submission or billing error, there's something missing on the claim form or something incorrect on the claim form, and they're not even entering it into adjudication. They're going to kick it back to you for corrections. If you have an untrained billing department and they don't know what to do with this CO16 and they don't know what's wrong with the claim, many times those things get put aside, they don't get corrected, and they don't get corrected in time, and then by the time you get around to it, you've lost out on billing out that claim altogether for timely filing. Because, again, even though your software may say that this claim was billed, it doesn't mean it was billed. A claim isn't considered to be billed until it's been accepted by the payer. So it has to go through a process of leaving your software, going to the clearinghouse, passing through the clearinghouse, received by the payer, and then accepted by the payer before it's actually considered to be billed. And through this vetting process, so to speak, or another word that is used for this is the scrubbing of claims, we have these rejections, these CO16 rejections. And CO means that if you don't do something about it, you're going to have to write that claim off in its entirety if that claim does not get corrected and resubmitted in a timely fashion. So according to the AMA Private Health Insurers Report Card, only 70% of all claims submitted nationwide are being paid. Okay, now, there are some righteous reasons for that. I'm not going to say that there aren't. Righteous reasons would be, for example, that the claim went against the patient's deductible, okay? But there are issues with that. So let's take a look at some of these bullet points. Number one reason for a claim not getting paid is improper coding, either an improper CPT code, ICD-10 code, the incorrect order of codes, incorrect modifiers, incomplete or incorrect claim submission procedures. And next to this little bullet point, you can put CO16. This is your claim that has missing information. The lack of training or knowledge of your office staff on how to interpret an EOB. So they get an EOB back and they see that the claim has been denied or rejected, but they don't know what to do about it. And so again, it sort of piles up on a, I'm going to take care of this later list, or I'll take care of this later pile. And it's kind of like dirty laundry, you know, it just keeps piling up and piling up and piling up to the point where eventually it just gets to be such a big pile that all you want to do is throw out the dirty laundry and buy new clothes, right? You can't do that with your claims. And so lack of training or knowledge on interpreting EOBs. What is it that we need to do if this claim is denied? What is the EOB telling us? How do we conduct an effective appeal? Okay, it's not the same for every payer. Nowadays, a lot of payers require you to conduct your appeals online through a provider portal. But your office is still doing the old school thing of producing a paper claim and writing corrected claim across the top and sending it to the insurance company and hoping for the best. Well, if you don't know how to do effective appeals, you could be leaving a lot of money on your table. Maybe your office hasn't done a good job at tracking and following up on unpaid or improperly paid claims. You know, the doctors that turn to me or turn to my company or other billing companies for that matter, and they're looking at claims, basically what they tell me is the billing is the easy part. You know, my staff is getting the claims out and they're posting the payments, but that seems to be all the time they have. They don't have time for follow-up. All they can do is get to the billing and the posting. And then if the insurance isn't verified correctly, and you do have a claim that has a non-covered service, the question is did you take the appropriate steps on the front end to collect that money from the patient? If not, now you're having to chase patient money. And also failure to pre-authorize services. We see a lot of this in chiropractic, especially if you're in network with United Healthcare, or you're in a state in which American Specialty Health Network, like Florida, California, and some other states, you know, Ashen has a big stronghold, and you're not getting those pre-auths done when necessary. You're losing money, because then at that point you're getting a denial for no authorization, and you can't balance bill the patient for that. Under your contract, you have to write that off. So is it reasonable to think that only 70% nationally that claims are getting paid? And I would say yes. And in some areas, it's even less than that, okay? Hopefully you're doing better than 70%. But let's face it, even if 90% of your claims are getting paid, if you're still leaving 10% of your money on the table, and let's say you're $1 million practice, you're losing $100,000 a year. That's a lot of money. I mean, and it doesn't really matter where you're at in practice, whether you're collecting $500,000 or $300,000 a year. 10% is $30,000, $50,000 that you could have in your pocket by having an airtight and rock solid billing department. And the question that you have to ask yourself is this something that we could improve on their own? Okay. Or if not, how could outsourcing your billing help in that matter? So let's talk a little bit about, for those of you who haven't done much investigation into billing companies and what they can do for you. There's all kinds of billing companies that perform all kinds of services. And so let's talk about some of the billing operations that could theoretically be outsourced from your office. Insurance verification, coding and charge entry, pay posting, claim submissions, following up on unpaid claims, tracking claims, denial management, appeals, reconsiderations, and redeterminations, and finally, at the very end, sending out patient statements and collecting from the patients on remaining balances. All of these activities, and there are some others that, pre-authorizations I didn't put here, but that would also be a service that outsourced billing companies could do on your behalf. And so one of the things that you need to think about with respect to your offices and whether outsourcing your billing is for you is do we have components in these bullet points in which we're really weak, and it doesn't seem like we would be able to overcome that by having an in-house billing company or an in-house biller, and maybe outsourcing that piece or all of it to a billing company would be beneficial for us. The next question would be, how does a billing company get paid? So there are several different structures that billing companies may present to you for how they are paid. The most common way that a billing company gets paid is on a percentage of collections. And I have seen rates everywhere from 4 to 10%. I've actually seen rates as low as 3% of your collections, and it does depend on the services provided. The median is somewhere between 6 and 8% of your collections. And when I say your collections, I'm talking about the collections on the services or the claims that your billing company is responsible for. So it wouldn't be your cash patients, because the billing company has nothing to do with your cash patients. You collect directly from your cash patients. But if you were to say to your billing company, let's say, we want you to handle our Medicare claims and our commercial insurance claims, and we'll take care of our personal injury claims in-house, then they would be paid based on the percentage of collections on those different types of cases, okay? The pros and cons to being paid based on the percentage of collections, number one pro is they get paid when you get paid. So that means it's performance-based, and that's a big plus. And they usually will offer comprehensive services, because the more they can do for you, the more likely it is going to be that they have control over whether you're getting paid or not, okay? And so they're going to offer more comprehensive services. Now, on the con side, if you don't correctly vet a billing company, I have seen situations where some billing companies may upcode your services in order to receive a higher reimbursement. I'll give you an example of this. We recently got a new client from another billing company, and this client, after a couple of months working with us, contacted us concerned that their collections were down, and that made me very concerned. I was like, wow, that doesn't usually happen with us, where, you know, their collections are actually down. And so I started looking at this and realized that their previous billing company had been taking all of the massage therapy codes, 97124, and converting them to 97140, which is manual therapy technique. And the reason why they did that was because the 97124 codes are generally not payable by the insurance. Some plans cover massage therapy, but a vast majority of them don't. But most plans cover 97140, so they were literally changing the codes to get reimbursed. The other thing that they were doing was taking a new patient exam code like a 99202, and without looking at the provider notes, they were upcoding them to 99204s. They were upcoding 98941s to 98942s. We didn't know any of this, and we were basically coding based on what the provider was giving us, okay? And so when that was discovered, that unfortunately for the provider, there wasn't a lot we could do. The collections were going to be lower, but they were going to at least be compliant and be legal. And so be careful and make sure that if you do hire a billing company, that they don't arbitrarily upcode services in order to receive higher reimbursement, because then they get paid more and you get paid more. Other cons would be, if you may find some billing companies that really undercut the percentage, and they'll say, oh, well, we'll do your billing for 2% or 3% or 4%. They may not perform well on the backside of claims follow-up and AR management. They'll do the front-end work pretty well for you, but they won't be very, they're going to go for the low-hanging fruit, the easy money. So be aware of that, okay? The other thing that we have found is that a lot of these billing companies that offer very low percentages or software programs that have quote-unquote billing services attached to their software programs will do the front-end work. They may correct claims, but they're not going to be aggressive about going after that 10% or that 15% of claims that aren't getting paid correctly. You'll also find that a lot of these companies have offshore presence, meaning that they're overseas. And I actually have worked in conjunction and done some projects with offshore billing companies for some medical services or medical providers that we've worked with some large medical providers where I have actually outsourced a piece of my billing service to an offshore company, and it's worked very well. But I personally have vetted that very carefully, and that is something that I deal with on the interior of my practice, and usually only with very, very large clinics like, we have one where we do the billing for 85 providers. Well, I have outsourced the coding department to a great company over in India for that, but they don't deal directly with the providers, they deal directly with me. And so billing companies that collect only on the insurance payments, also be careful about that, because they may not perform well for you in the early part of the year with ever rising deductibles. They don't really have a big stakehold in the process if they're just collecting insurance payments only. Paid by claims submitted. That's another way that you can basically be charged. This can be economical if you're a small practice. You could pay as little as $50 a month for a flat rate, or $2 to $4 per claim on the average. Now, again, on the con side of this, once the claims are submitted, there's really no financial incentive for them to follow up, okay? Because you're getting paid based on claims submitted, not based on collections. The other thing that I've seen with the claims submitted flat per claim fee is that for chiropractors who see a patient 3 times a week, you're going to be billed for 3 claims instead of instead of submitting those claims once a week for 3 services, you're going to end up paying 3 separate claims. So be aware of that. The other thing is that if you want the lower fee, you may be required to pay a bulk upfront payment to get the lowest cost, and then they take the money off of that upfront payment. So those are just some of the things that you would need to be aware of as far as how billing companies charge for their services. Let's take a look at what it realistically costs you to do your billing in-house. Now, I have pulled these statistics from the U.S. Department of Labor, and this is based on the NEX code of offices of chiropractors, because this is, ChiroHealthUSA. We're talking mainly to chiropractors here, and these are national averages. So basically, if you're in California or New York or somewhere else where there's a much higher cost of living like Alaska, these median hourly wages for these different occupations are probably going to be a little bit higher than this. But on the average, okay, office and administrative support occupations in a chiropractic office, the average is running between $14 an hour, $20 an hour for office managers. Other office administrative support workers around $13 an hour. That's the median hourly wage. Now, again, that's right there in the middle, 50th percentile. So you're going to have some lower, and you're going to have some that are higher. When you think about that, and you think about, okay, as you're assessing the cost of a billing company, and you're trying to decide, is this billing company going to cost significantly more than keeping my billing in-house? You have to look at both the tangible and intangible costs. And so the tangibles on the in-house billing would be the average salary of your CA, the cost of benefits, paid time off, vacation, insurance, uniform allowance, things like that, your payroll taxes, your unemployment taxes, and any bookkeeping preparation fees to manage your payroll. Okay, so if you look at all of those costs and add those together, and then look at the cost of what an outsourced billing company may cost you. One of the things that we do, for example, is we will run some historical data on your practice and say, if we were doing your billing based on the historical data, this is how much you would be paying us. So that would give you a good comparison, okay? And that's exactly what we do. Now you have, on the intangible side of in-house billing, you have the cost of staff turnover. And there was a great study that was done by William G. Bliss and Associates Consulting. They're one of the top HR consulting firms in the United States, and they basically said and maintained that every time you lose a staff person, it is going to cost you 1.5 times an annual salary to replace them. Now, that seems weird when you think about it in terms of just straight up wages, but you have to think about how much money are you losing when you have that vacancy? How much money are you losing in claims that don't get billed, or statements that don't go out, okay, collections that don't happen because of this turnover? How much time and money are you having to spend in training a new staff person and bringing them fully up to speed, and then 6 months later they leave, or a year later they leave, and you're having to do this all over again? This is probably one of the highest of the intangible costs that doctors' offices are facing nowadays, is finding and keeping and retaining good staff in your billing department or even at the front desk. You also have to look at the skill level of the employees. So if you're hiring a highly skilled employee, you're going to pay a lot more for it, but you're still going to have to train them on your own systems. If you have to send them for professional certifications or continuing education and the dedicated position of an in-house biller, all of these are intangible costs. Now, on the outsource side of it, your tangibles is going to be the cost of the service. And again, a simple way to estimate that cost is to run your practice stats on the billing profiles that you would want to turn over, calculate the number of claims submitted that month for your per claim fee to arrive at what the cost would be, or the total collections for the percentage fee service. If you're eliminating the position, subtract the staff costs for an in-house biller from the estimated cost of the billing service, and that would give you the differential. In some cases, it actually will cost less for you to use a billing company than to have your biller in-house. In some cases, you'll find it, and actually in many cases, you're going to find it to be a wash. And in some cases, you're going to find that the cost is slightly higher. So those are just some of the ways to analyze whether the cost of outsourcing your billing is worth it or not. So how does it all work? And this is usually the question that I get asked the most, is when somebody has never used a billing company and they're thinking about the process of it. How do we do this? How do we make it work? So there's several different models that billing companies will use. This method that I'm going to show you here is what I would say the more traditional, or I'll even venture to say old school billing companies will do. They basically have a dedicated software program, and they have a dedicated team of billers and follow-up people who will take all of your data. You will send all your data to the billing company, that usually using something called an encounter sheet or a day sheet. You'll send them your daily charges. You'll send them, a list of payments that came in by check, credit card and cash. You'll send them all your EOBs, and then they will enter all of that data and demographic into their own proprietary software. The billing company will usually provide the providers with remote access into that billing software, or with a login, so that you can look at your patient accounts and so on and so forth. The pros to this method would be that you don't have to buy any software or maintain any software in-house. You don't have licensing fees and update fees and clearinghouse fees and all of that. Okay, that's a big pro, and some providers really don't want to deal with software at all. The con, though, is loss of control, and to me, this is a big con. So you need to ask yourself this question: is, well, what if I don't like the billing company? What if I decide that I just want to do this for a year and maybe bring my billing back in-house after everything has been cleaned up? Well, what happens to those accounts if all of the data is with that billing company and not with you? How do you know what to collect from the patient? Unless the billing company keeps keeps a very sophisticated accounting of patient payments and insurance payments and allows you to have access to that in real time. When that patient shows up at the front desk and says, how much do I owe you today? It either means you're going to have a parallel software program that you're entering everything into and you're doing double work then, or you're going to have access to that billing company software to obtain that data, which again asks the question, if I leave, what happens to that data? Do I get that? Do I get that database from the billing company, or is that all lost to me when I switch billing companies? You know, and you have to ask yourself, you know, what kind of communication do you have with your biller or your billing company? The second method, which is the method that my company actually uses, is that the billing company, and there are more and more billing companies that actually do this. We were kind of cutting edge when we first started as a billing company back in 2006. We've used this method all along, and there were very few billing companies that were doing this, and now with technology being the way they are, more billing companies are utilizing this method. So that essentially what we do is we just work with whatever you have in your office. So if you're a ChiroTouch client or Eclipse or EasyBiz or Chiro 8000, we basically will either log in to your system or the billing company will log into your system remotely and work as if they are sitting there in the office. They're just kind of like ghosts or ghost writers or ghost employees. They're actually in your software. You maintain full control of your accounts. If you have a software program that is web-based, such as PracticeMate and some of the other programs that are out there that now are kind of web-based programs, you would simply provide the billing company with login credentials to your web-based program. The pros is you maintain complete control of your accounts. You can monitor what they're doing daily. You can even, in many cases, you can even watch them working if they're logged in remotely into your system. And if you discontinue the service, your accounts will stay with you, okay? I mean, you'll lose the billing company, you won't lose the patient or the patient data. The cons are some logistical mainly and a little bit of cost. So a server-based software would require you to give the billing company dedicated remote access to the computer. In some cases, depending on the age of your computers, you may have to upgrade your hardware in order to make that work. I don't usually see this as a huge problem, but in some cases, that's a problem. If your program is server-based, meaning that they're logging in remotely, if you're down, they're down. So meaning if your internet goes down, if you have a power outage, then they're dead in the water as well. They can't work. You would end up having to maintain the cost of the software license and the clearinghouse fees. Just depending on the software, that could range, in the hundreds to, several $1,000s a year of clearinghouse fees and software. Although most software programs allow you to work with whatever clearinghouse you want, and there are clearinghouses that are significantly less expensive than others. And so we definitely, like my company, we analyze this with you, and if you're using a software program that we know another clearinghouse might be less expensive for you to use, we'll let you know about that and help you save money in that arena. You may have a little bit of a learning curve as a biller learns how to use the software. Now, over the years, our company has, we probably have familiarity with about 15 different software platforms because we've worked with so many different providers over the years. And so, but occasionally we come across one that we've never used, and we're going to learn it, but it may take us a little bit of time. Or if you use another billing company, it may take them a little bit of time to become familiar with your software platform. So let's talk about some of the bewares, I call these. And when you're vetting a billing company or when you're looking for a billing company to partner with, these are some of the things you have to watch out for, okay? Number one, beware of redirection of funds. I have actually heard of billing companies who require the providers to have the payments sent to them, okay? To me, this is a big, big, big no-no. You do not want to work with a billing company that requires you to have your insurance checks sent to them directly and then they pay you, all right? Don't ever, ever, ever do that, okay? Billing companies should never have access to the money, just the remits and the EOBs. So be aware of that. Be aware of security issues. This is probably even a bigger one than the redirection of funds. There are some unscrupulous billing companies out there that do the redirection of funds, but the security issues are big. Work with a billing company will always create a bit of a HIPAA risk and compliance violations. And so the most common would be a failure to obtain a business associate agreement with that billing company, using unsecured email and or faxing to discuss patient accounts, failure to de-identify PHI if you're using an unsecured source for data transfer, then you have to have everything de-identified, non-HIPAA compliance file sharing like Dropbox, billing companies selling off accounts without proper disclosure to clients, billing companies outsourcing their services to an independent offshore company. As I mentioned to you, we have worked with offshore companies from time to time with large accounts. But when that happens, I talk to my client about it. I say, look, this is what I'm thinking about doing. Tell me what you think. Are you okay with that? And if they're not, then I'm not going to do that. Billing company with no compliance training or compliance programs. You know, one of the first things that I did as a billing company is my very, very first certification was an MCSP, which is a medical compliance specialist. Since then, I have actually gotten my CPCO, which is a Certified Professional Compliance Officer through AAPC. And the reason why I did that was not to necessarily take on clients with compliance issues and teach you how to do better with compliance, but to teach my company how to be a compliant billing company and in turn make sure that our clients are working compliantly as well in their documentation, in their coding, in their interaction with us. We are very, very compliance nerdy, I guess is the word. You know, I am extremely careful about the compliance side of things with my clients, with my billers, and making sure that we are not putting ourselves or your practice in security risk situations, if at all possible. So those are some of the things to kind of be aware of when you're looking to hire a billing company. So the question is then, how do I choose a billing company? And what you need to do is, again, this should be a very thoughtful process. It should not be a knee-jerk reaction. Even for Gold Star, you know, I would want you to ask me if you were interviewing me as your billing company. These are the questions that I would want you to ask me. And it's funny because I actually use this outline when I have doctors call me and they don't know what questions to ask. I will just go through all of these questions and be proactive with it because I know that these are questions that they need to have answered, okay? So number one is it's very important to find a billing company that will meet your needs, and cost should not be the only factor. I get a lot of shoppers, I'm sure, just the way you all do in chiropractic where you get new patients shopping around for the lowest price adjustment, okay? But you know, just like I know, that the lowest price adjuster in town isn't necessarily the best chiropractor in town, okay? It's the same thing with billing companies. You can look for the lowest price, and certainly you do want to shop around for the best price, but you also want quality, and you also want a company that will do what you need them to do. So before you start your search, make sure that you have a clear idea of what you want out of your billing service. Write it down so you can systematically interview the company based on your needs. So here's some things to consider. Do you want to turn everything over to them, all of your accounts or just a portion? What duties do you want the billing company to perform? And if you go back to the slide earlier in our presentation of what can an outsourced billing company do, use that as your bullet points and think, yes, I do want them to do my verifications, and I do want them to send out patient statements, and I do want them to do my coding, and so on and so forth. Or, you know what, no, we'll do our own coding. I just want them to pick it up from the billing. And so look at that and make sure that you have a clear description of what you want the billing company to do for you. What level of accountability do you want, okay? And these are questions you would ask the billing company. Are you going to send me my stats on a daily basis, a weekly, a monthly? How are we going to communicate? Are we going to do regular phone conferences? Do we meet on a weekly basis by phone? And then also, what is your budget and how much are you willing to spend? Other questions that you would want to ask a billing company when you're interviewing them is, how long have you been in business? How do you work with your clients? Do you use your own software or can you use ours? And if they're willing to use your software, ask them if they have experience with your software. Do you have experience with Eclipse or ChiroTouch, whatever? Do you charge by a percentage or a flat fee per claim, and what are the charges? Are there any startup or recurring monthly costs? Like, for example, with my company, we charge a percentage of collections, and there is another monthly cost, and that is if you have us send out patient statements, we charge you for the postage for those statements. And I'm very upfront with a new client about that, is that you're going to incur postage costs. So if you want us to send out the same 200 statements every month, then we're not going to pay for that. You're going to pay for that. And that's one of the things that we work with on reducing the amount of statements that are going out and trying to get those accounts cleared up. Do you require a long-term agreement? What services do you provide for the fee that you're charging? Make sure you have a list of all those requirements so that all your questions will be answered. Do I need any special equipment in order to work with you? Do your billers have experience in chiropractic coding and billing? Some billing companies do and some don't. Do you assign one person to my account, or do I have to go through a customer service unit? So that's an important question to ask. Do I have a go-to person at your company so that if there's ever anything wrong or if I have a question about a patient account, I know who to call or my staff knows who to call? Can I speak to one of your chiropractic billers and pick their brain and see what they know? What kind of staff support will you need from us? You know, and this varies. So let me just speak to this a little bit. Sometimes a doctor will outsource their billing, and they will, in the beginning, feel like they're still doing almost as much work as if they were doing the billing in-house. And the reason for that is because they're still doing so much work on paper. So one of the things that the staff still has to do, even if the billing is being outsourced, is sending copies of EOBs over to the billing company. Well, if you're still getting the majority of your EOBs by mail, that's a lot of work for your staff to scan those EOBs and name the files and drop them into the file sharing folder and all of that. Okay, and they feel like, golly, it'd just be easier if we just post the EOBs ourselves. So one of the things that you're probably going to want to do is look at your processes, and your billing company should be looking at those processes with you and try to get as much of it automated as possible to where 80 or 90% of your EOBs are being delivered electronically so that your staff has very minimal work to do on their end, and you don't have to have a lot of staff support to help out the billing company get their jobs done. Okay, how does my office communicate with the biller and vice versa? So one thing you may want to give them as a scenario is, okay, I have a patient, they're in the office and they want to know how much they owe. What do I do? Who do I call? How do I find out? Okay, and that would be a great question to ask your prospective billing company. Is your company based in the U.S.? And if yes, ask them, are your billers located in the U.S.? Because what I have found out is that there are a lot of offshore billing companies that have a corporate presence in the United States, but their actual day-to-day workers are overseas. Okay, so that's a good question to ask. Do you have experience servicing clients in my state? Do you offer ongoing coding and billing education to your billers so that they're up to speed on the most current events? Are your billers trained in HIPAA compliance? Will they notify us if we're in violation? Are you familiar, meaning the billing company, with the OIG guidelines of compliance requirements for billing companies? I am surprised at how many billing companies are not, and how many billing companies do not have a compliance program in place. How do you fulfill those requirements? If they say they are familiar with the OIG guidelines, and you ask them the next question, well, how do you fulfill those requirements? They should tell you, we have a written compliance manual. We have a compliance officer. We have annual training for our billers and our clients on compliance issues and compliance, hotspots. Are you willing, and then the last question would be, are you willing to provide me with references? So basically, these are your top questions to ask when you are vetting a billing company. And I think that if you can really take this systematic approach of, asking yourself the question, first of all, is outsourcing really the right move for me, or do I just need some, maybe I have deficiencies in my billing department, but I've got good people, and I think that with just a little bit of extra training, they could be great at what they do. Then you don't need to outsource your billing. Then what you need is a company that can provide training for your staff. And actually, Gold Star Medical, we do have that service. We have a training service so that if you decide you don't want to outsource your billing and you just want to get trained, better trained on coding and billing and compliance, we have that option for you. But if you look at the cost of, how much does it cost you over the last year to 2 years in maintaining an in-house billing staff, in the turnover issue, in the unpaid claims, in the lost revenue, and then you look at what a billing company would cost, a good billing company, you have to ask yourself the question is, would it be worth it to try to outsource our billing? I will tell you that outsourcing billing has become a much more common practice in medical offices, okay? Actually, for Gold Star Medical, from my particular company, the medical outsourcing is outpacing chiropractic at this point. And we started as a chiropractic medical billing company because that's where I came from. I lived in chiropractic. I've been involved in the chiropractic field since 1982. I was a CA, I was a biller, I was a trainer before I started my company. So it was very natural that the majority of our clients were chiropractors, and they still are. But in the last 2 years, I would say that we are receiving more new billing clients on the medical side than we are chiropractic clients. And the main reason is because the medical side is recognizing the benefits and the cost effectiveness of outsourcing their billing versus having to struggle with it in-house month after month and year after year, especially when you look at the cost of the high employee turnover that is just rampant in business nowadays. And so this kind of ends our presentation. We have about 5 minutes for some Q&A if we have questions that have been that you would like to pose to me. I'd be more than happy to discuss with you those questions. And I think that if you would like to have a one-on-one with me, we could do a free 30-minute phone consultation through March 31st. I'm offering that as an option for you. You can call me and we can schedule a phone consultation to discuss your needs. I can also do a 1-hour remote assessment of your accounts receivables. And if you want me to do that, what we would do is sign a business associate agreement, and I can log into your software and kind of take a look at your accounts receivable and your outstanding claims, and kind of give you a report card of where you're at. And so if you want that, please mention ChiroHealthUSA webinar to get the complimentary offers. And thank you so much for your attendance. At this point, do we have any questions? I'm just going to turn it over to Christy for just a few minutes.
Thank you, Lisa. We do have quite a few questions. The first is, does a billing company help train you when you are making consistent coding issues?
So the question is, does the billing company help train you? Could you repeat that again? Sorry.
Yeah, does the billing company help train you when you are making consistent coding errors?
Yes, the billing company should. And that would be one of the questions that you would want to ask a billing company is, what do you do if you see us coding incorrectly or using, incorrect diagnosis codes or coding that is not in line with medical policy or the Medicare LCDs? A good billing company is going to pick those things up, and they're going to alert you to the fact that you're doing something wrong so that it doesn't continue to happen.
Wonderful. So this is another great question. Does it matter where the billing company is located? My clinic is in Alaska, so the difference between my time zone and Eastern is a big deal, I would think. And isn't it better to have someone that is familiar with local insurance companies?
There definitely can be something said about having the local billing company. The problem is that you limit yourself when you're dealing with a local company. You're limiting yourself to whatever their body of knowledge is, and so if that local billing company does not have familiarity with chiropractic, for example, that's a much bigger deal than not having familiarity with Alaska insurance, okay? We actually have 4 clients in Alaska right now, and one of their billers is out of New York, so that's like, I think she's in Anchorage and they're in Anchorage, so it's like a 4-hour time difference from her to them. And they, from the standpoint of the way the billing companies or we communicate, a lot of our communication is through the software. So if there is an issue that we need to bring up, we're going to put a message or a task that needs to be done into the software. And so we go back and forth between the software to pick up a to-do list, and so we're not talking on the phone as much because, number one, we're busy. If we're on the phone, we want to be on the phone with the insurance company. If you're on the phone, we want you on the phone with the scheduling patients. We don't want you on the phone with your billing service. So we try a good billing company will try to use your program as much as possible so that the time difference doesn't matter as much. Typically, what will happen with a big time zone difference is you're going to be pretty much reaching your biller. Let's say when you get up or you come to work in the morning, you're going to have probably access to your biller for the first half of the day, and then the second half of the day, they will probably not answer their phones because it'll be, after working hours for them. But most, I would say that the geographic location should not be the defining factor. What I would recommend that you do is, what is their knowledge of chiropractic? Have they worked with clients in your state? Okay, that's a good question to ask because, in some cases, there are these nuances about California insurance or insurance in Alaska, and even in Alaska you have scope of practice where massage therapists can bill out claims because they have an NPI number. And where, if you're doing multi-specialty practices in Alaska, the nurse practitioners are working autonomously and things like that. Those are important questions that a billing company would need to know. But I don't think the geography needs to be the number one requisite for choosing a billing company. Hopefully that answers the question.
Okay. The next question, I love this one, and I'm not at all surprised that it was asked. Which software do you find the easiest to work with?
Well, when a doctor asks me that question, I have to ask the question back, are you talking about the documentation or are you talking about the billing? Because they're very different. From the billing standpoint, okay, the two programs that I have found to be the most comprehensive and easiest to work with is Eclipse and ChiroTouch. And from the billing standpoint, Eclipse is pretty much, and I say Eclipse is stronger on the billing side and ChiroTouch is stronger on the documentation side. As far as for chiropractic, a good kind of overall program that does both very well, I would say ChiroTouch would probably be number one in that, at least in our experience. But yeah, it's a very, very subjective question. So.
Do you help small practices who recently started accepting insurance?
Yes. We have a credentialing department, and we also, if the small practice wants to do their billing in-house, then we do have training programs available for that, or again, we do outsource our billing as well.
Wonderful. Well, I want to thank everyone for those great questions. They were fantastic. And thank you, Lisa, for, taking the time out of your very busy schedule. Y'all, she's out of town right now, and then she's about to fly home and go out of town again. She works all the time.
Just FYI, for those of you who are interested in talking to me, I'm working this week. I'm working from my New York office, meaning my parents' house, but I am working all week. And then next week I will be in the office Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. And then on Thursday I am leaving, and I will be out of the country until March 4th. So if you do want to talk to me, please call me as soon as possible. Or and if you call the office, or call my cell phone during the time that I'm out of the country, you'll get a message saying I'm out of the country and call me back March 4th. So anyway, just wanted to let you know about that.
Wonderful. So just so you know, again, and that was the other thing I was like, oh, do we need to tell them that you're going to be out of the country? But her staff and team at their office is amazing and will be super helpful. Just a reminder that next week, me and my good friend Ali Nickpour, who's going to be here to talk about how to appear on multiple times on Google's first page. I'm so excited about this webinar. We're going to be broadcasting live from Las Vegas because next Thursday is the first day of Parker Las Vegas, and Ali and I are going early, so we'll be broadcasting live from there. We'll try to make sure that we find a quiet place in Vegas so that we don't distract you with all of the sights and sounds. Yeah, maybe. We'll find out next week. But I want to thank everyone for hanging in here for minutes over the hour, for being a part of the webinar series today. If you have any questions for Lisa after the webinar, feel free to email me. You're going to get an email in the next 10 to 15 minutes. It's going to have a link to the webinar recording, and you can always reply back to that and email me your questions. I'll make sure they get to Lisa, and we'll get those answered for you. So I want to tell everybody, have an amazing rest of your week and a fabulous day. We'll see you next week. Bye, everyone. All right, we are no longer live.